Discussion topic for your lads waffling away slot, which doesn't have a name yet. I am early 40s, Man United fan who's lived through the good times. As the Premier League returns, it really hits me how much I've lost my love for it. There was a time, says John, when the Community Shield was an oasis in the desert. These days, I'm not sure what day it's on, nor could I care less. Maybe it's because things are dark for Manchester United fans these days, but I think it's much, much deeper than that. I find friends and I, who once talked football religiously and routinely, are all of a similar feeling. Liverpool fans, admittedly, to a lesser extent, but they are not immune to thinking the whole thing has lost its core attraction. It all feels so empty. Too much money, too sanitised, too much football on television. The players are all robotic. It all feels hollow. Manchester City are the perfect embodiment of the current age. On the surface, better than offerings of previous generations, but I really just don't care. Once upon a time, watching several games was a staple of my weekend, and now it is background wallpaper TV at best. I will sooner listen to your good selves or watch the Sky Sports pundits back on YouTube as opposed to the actual games. Champions League knockout stages still have a bit of lure, I grant you. The rest of it has never felt more pointless and unimportant. Is this just age? Is this just my circle? I somehow doubt it. John Kay in Limerick. Thank you very much for the email, John. John Kiley, big fan.
Quickly moved on to the
the important matters.
The GA season is over, so like he has to watch something.
Inter-county season, Ronan, as we'll probably talk about later.
Well, indeed. So who wants to get the ball rolling? Are we all immune to what John is saying here? Can we even relate to what John is saying here? I would say in my circle of friends, John has articulated pretty perfectly the general feeling towards the Premier League in particular.
Yeah, speaking for myself, it'd be the same. Much the same. Not as necessarily group friends, you still talk a lot about football, still watch a lot of football, but it doesn't feel as important. No, I wouldn't necessarily agree with every part of that. I think the quality and everything else is higher than ever. No,
much higher than ever.
Shadow of a doubt. It's much, much better when you watch it, and the good games are more plentiful and better to watch when they are, but it doesn't really grab me as it once did. It's not. I don't find it essential, really.
I don't think the players are robotic either, I have to say. I think that's probably a little bit unfair, that players are seen as robotic, but in general, I have to say I also agree that there is I don't know, it just feels slightly less vital, and I think it might be because it is so in our face all the time, constant, always there, and you know, because of that, I think we lose it a little bit. You know what I mean? If it's always in your face, you kind of almost stop paying attention to it. So there's like no break from Premier League. There's no. I was saying to you earlier, Ronan, it's like when the NFL comes back, as much as I think I'm paying attention in the off season, I'm always going, how did so-and-so sign for them? How did I miss that? And this is the first year ever where I've noticed that with football transfers. They're happening without me paying it. I know a few of them are in the pipeline, and then it's all, this was confirmed weeks ago. He's already played pre-season friendlies. I'm like, Jesus. You know, and that's what it feels like to me. It's like more and more it becomes omnipresent in our lives, more and more it becomes omnipresent in media, the less I kind of am drawn to it. Not saying I'm uninterested. I'm looking forward to it coming back, especially now that there's almost nothing else, but I don't feel the same attraction to it, especially at this stage of the year.
Yeah, well, I think John diagnosed one element of it himself there, that he liked it when Man United were good, and now he doesn't like it when Man United are bad. That's from a Man United fan to say that. I think it's kind of understandable, because I know Liverpool fans who are quite lapsed in their, you know, quite meagre years, and have since, you know, come back, redoubled their fandom since the Klopp era. So I think it is just cyclical like that. And also, I think football, the jeopardy in games has changed now, where clubs that used to be able to punch up and like mix it in the physical stakes, and like the likes of Man City don't get troubled in that way. I find like it's more clinical, because most teams are trying to copy their paradigm and play out from the back and that kind of thing, where City are just going to beat you at that every day of the week. Whereas even the top Manchester United teams of the 90s would get knocked off by Barnsley or somebody, and you know, a up and at 'em kind of performance. It just doesn't happen anymore.
The points totals are so much higher now. The days of ambushes are much fewer and far between. And there have been exceptions. You think of Aston Villa's win against Liverpool, but I was just going to say, for instance, you can't think of a time where Man United are beaten out the gate 5-1 by Newcastle and then 6-3 by Southampton. That's not really going to happen to a Man City.
No, and like I remember the Mourinho, the first Chelsea iteration under him, it was like relentless grind and they just churn out the results. And there was one result that stuck out in my mind just because it was so unique. I think Middlesbrough beat them 3-0 in what was a dead rubber from their perspective. It was just never would have happened because they'd gotten to a point where they were winning these games almost in automatic mode. So that is now the norm. And to your point, like the points totals bear that out, where a draw is seen as a critical result now in a title race.
Yeah.
Do you know, that never used to be the case.
To what extent is the cosy relationship between all the players undermining the sense of importance? As in, it seems like never again will we see Keane Vieira levels of antipathy or Van Nistelrooy missing the penalty and the Arsenal players reacting. That these players now are not rivals. They're all part of the 0.001% of millionaires who have just won spectacularly at life. They have so much more in common with each other. They see it that way. They chat in the tunnel. They live in the same areas. They probably socialise together, and there's an affinity between them, as opposed to a sense of we desperately want to beat you and we don't like you, and as a fan, therefore, God, I'm going to have a bit of that as well. Like even this great current rivalry between Klopp and Guardiola is a very friendly one by most standards.
Even when that hug looks a little bit forced and weird, like it did last year.
But it's remarkably good going considering the extent to which they're rivals.
Yeah.
You know, you just wonder if that's taken a lot of the fire out of the whole thing as well. That the players, I mean, in a way, it's more progressive and they're just more mature as human beings.
I was going to say, do we want to,
But you sometimes miss a bit of fire and brimstone, no?
What's that down to?
I think it's the money. I think they're just all such successes in life that they're kind of like, well, we're all together in this.
Is it also to do with social media? Because, and maybe it's the fact that they're all doing pre-season together almost, and they're all in more international camps and different things, and probably at more clubs as well. You would think for the most part, because I think. It's funny listening to, move back to GA just for a second, it's funny you listen to like Anthony Daly show or something like that, and they all talk about how they're all really good friends. Now they're all from different counties, but they hated each other in their playing days, and it took them turning into their 40s and seeing each other at functions to realise that they were all the same and they all kind of liked each other. It feels like the footballers used to be like that, but now know in their early 20s that that's all bollocks, and that ultimately we're just playing a game, and you know what, I like you. We're like Phil Foden and I don't know, Liverpool player of your choice go out together on England camp and become great mates. They don't take that hatred, or they take that friendship back to their clubs with it. They don't suddenly hate the person across from them. And I think maybe that is more just like, do you know what, I understand the world. I'm not playing this game because someone like Roy Keane is shouting at me in the dressing room about I have to hate my the other team.
Did it make it better? Did it make it better?
I don't know. Absolutely. I'm talking about though.
That wasn't forced.
No, I don't think it was forced. I think that was part of the culture then. But I'm saying to you is that it was ultimately futile. It was better for us as an audience.
Yeah.
But I'm saying they're probably better off not acting like that. You know what I mean? It doesn't. And also, the game is just a lot more scientific and a lot more, detailed now. So they're thinking about how to win matches. They're not thinking about killing the opposition.
Yeah, they're probably told like that is a waste of energy.
But isn't it a great pity from our point of view as the viewing public?
Totally, no, because I remember Jamie Carragher writing in his column ahead of the second fixture of the Liverpool City Premier League season. So it was about 8 games to go. It wasn't quite crunch time in the title race, but it was an unbelievable game. I think it was a 2-2. But he said in his morning column, this is the greatest rivalry in Premier League history, and everybody's automatic response was, it's really not. It's really not. And it's not.
It might be the best two teams that existed at the same time, but that doesn't make it the best rivalry.
Yeah, a rivalry, it's about the characters, it's about what's intrinsic there, and all that this fixture has, it doesn't have that. And like the Arsenal-Manchester United games, in terms of classic fixtures that stick out, there probably aren't that many of them, like in terms of pure footballing quality. I think the FA Cup replay, the 98-99 games, probably one of the best games ever played in England. That's up there. And then it's always pointed to the Roy Keane in the tunnel 4-2, but they were kind of after the fact then. Chelsea were the force of the time.
Yeah, there was an 0-3 game, I think, where United were wearing that weird jumper jersey and Henry got an amazing goal. I think that was only 1-0, but I do remember it very well. And there was the 98 kind of decider where David Platt got the winner in a 3-2 game. That was an absolute classic. But again, they're all different teams really, and it's like they're well spread out over time. Whereas I do feel like that Liverpool City,
it's the most consistent run of top quality games. Yeah,
and even like they played in the FA Cup semi-final this year, and like a month later, everyone had forgotten about it, and that should have been a huge game. That was a part of a culmination of them playing 4 times.
City didn't take that seriously, did they?
They did, didn't they?
The semi-final of the Cup.
Yeah.
No, it was your man, the American lad in goals.
Ah well,
Zach Steffen.
American lad in goals.
That's just one.
No, they weren't. They didn't.
Anyway, I'm just saying that should have been a match. If they hated each other, if those two managers hated each other, it wouldn't have mattered what competition they were playing.
See, I do agree that the quality of football is better than ever. I enjoy watching it more better than ever. And I found it frustrating watching football for a long time when in English football the ball was just given away so routinely. And like you'd watch La Liga when La Liga was in its
like
prime.
getting done for you.
No, but I really did find it frustrating. Like it was brainless stuff. And then you watch La Liga and you'd see like right backs that you didn't know for Valencia who refused to give the ball away, and it was a better quality of football. But what really would grab you about English football in that period still was the emotion. It was Keane Vieira in the tunnel. It was the knowledge that the England team didn't like each other based on club allegiances. It was of all of that stuff. And now with all of that gone, I just think as a fan, well, why would I care if they don't really care that much? It undercuts the whole thing. Why?
It's homogenised. Like the teams getting promoted from the Championship, and granted there's a bit of identity there. Nottingham Forest is a nice story and they'll bring a bit of colour in that regard in history, but
they won't.
They all play the same football though.
They won't bring anything.
No, but like they all play the same, kind of systems, and they're all going to the same seminars, and all these coming coaches who are the next big thing, and then end up getting sacked for like Alan Pardew or whoever to try and.
Well, actually, even the managerial turnover situation is interesting. We used to, when I was first working on this show, anytime a Premier League manager was sacked, we would do a big piece on it. It would be the 7:30 piece. We barely even do that now for most managers because there's such turnover. It's like, who's gone? Okay, fine. It's like, who's leaving a mark anymore? There's such turnover in that regard as well. That's really. Have you not noticed that, Mick?
Yeah, no, I have. But I also think that there's a general homogenisation of maybe our coverage as well, I have to say. I definitely feel like we do a lot more Liverpool and Man United than we used to. And Man City, right? Okay, because they're there. Man United hang on there because they're the biggest club along with Liverpool in Ireland, right? But other than that, it's City, Liverpool all the way. And it's maybe because nobody else really has a chance. We'll do a bit of Chelsea. There was a lot of stories on them last year. And after that, there's a sense out there that nobody cares about anything after that. And yet, there's more in-your-face Premier League coverage than ever before, and Burnley are treated like one of the biggest clubs in the world on Sky Sports News. You know what I mean? So I don't know where I fall on that, but I think that might be one of the reasons that Sean Dyche gets sacked, and we kind of like go, God, that's a bit mad, isn't it? And sort of move on, whereas that would have been a big story 10 years ago. I don't know why that is, but I feel that there's definitely a feeling. Maybe it's because what Ronan was saying earlier on is that there isn't going to be that team coming from nowhere. Nottingham Forest got promoted, I think, after the first season of the Premier League, or one of the first seasons when Stan Collymore was with them. And I think they finished 3rd or 4th that year. I remember them drawing with United on the first Monday Night Football of the season and thinking, this is an exciting team that I haven't seen play, because they'd come from the Division 1 or whatever it was at the time. That's not going to happen now. You know what I mean? You might have a good Wolves team or something that finishes 9th or 10th.
And that scene is unbelievable. Like the Newcastle team of the mid-90s came like back to back.
They finished 3rd as well.
Should have won the league. Like,
maybe it's just our age, is it?
I think so.
I think there's an element of that. I think there's a lot of good things that are still there, and I think there was times last season that it was as exciting as ever before, and maybe you just don't take these things as seriously. And there is a sense of, I don't know, did you not find when you were a kid that your parents' generation went away from it a little bit as they got older, because it ultimately doesn't feel, it's not local to us. That's another thing you have to be honest about. You can be a Man United fan, you can be a Liverpool fan, whatever, and some people stay with that in a die-hard way until the day they die, and there's nothing wrong with that, and it's real. But for a lot of us, it slips away a little bit because it's just something we picked as a kid. It's not to our locality, it's not part of who we are, in the way that maybe your GEA team or your League of Ireland team or even your rugby team or something might be.
So back in the day, like Jack Walker would own Blackburn as well, and there was a local aspect to the clubs, I suppose, whereas now obviously it's either an oil state or an American venture capitalist that owns the clubs. Has that contributed, do we think?
I don't know. I was talking to like a friend of mine is a Leeds fan, right? And in a very similar boat with like Calvin Phillips leaving for Man City.
Yeah.
And he's like, he'll always be a legend. He could have left when we got promoted and he didn't. He stayed for another season. And I'm like, well, yeah, it was like Jack Grealish, I suppose, stayed at Villa until, you know, and then went. And it's like, but ultimately, what did he do? Like, I mean, he joined City and fair play to him. He got his medal and he'll do it for a team that probably would have won something anyway. And it's like, that's the way of the world now. That's the way we're being told that that's important. But for me, it's like, would Jack Grealish have had a more interesting career for a team that has potential and has money in a way that I think few people pay attention to, if you'd maybe tried to build something at Villa, and even if you qualify one season for the Champions League between now and the rest of his career, is that more important than winning?
But that's not new.
I'm talking about it being away.
Players moving to bigger clubs
Well,
isn't
it
new,
isn't.
though.
Raheem Sterling is moving to Chelsea now, having played for Manchester City and Liverpool. They're the top 3 teams in the country, and he's going to have played for all 3 of them. I do think there's a little bit more of it.
That's not, but like even thing, like at the time, so like it's not, that's not too unusual, and it's not like on paper that looks odder than it is, but like Liverpool to City was a definitive move up when he left Liverpool. They weren't Klopp's Liverpool. Do you know what I mean?
They were on
And
their
now
way to. I mean, that was a money issue, is why he left Liverpool. It wasn't necessarily because of ambition or anything like that. I did go off on a tangent there, and I'm sorry. I did know, and I did about. But what we were talking about with the Villa Leeds thing was conversation of like, we've been friends for years, we've been Villa and Leeds fans for years, and we've always talked about it. And there was this conversation of like, what does it really matter to us? Are we just supporting jerseys at this point? And whereas like, what does the club mean? It's a place that we've been a few times, and it's a load of fans that we don't know who go to the matches every week, and we might go over every now and then. But what does it ultimately mean to us? And it's like, I'm still looking at the signings, I'm still thinking about the team, and I'm looking at the captain news today, and I'm interested. It's not gone, but I do think that as you get older, the importance of that has to wane somewhat, unless you're somebody who goes over every week. And I just think that's to answer your question, is it age?
There's a text in about the TV saturation. Anything that's contributing?
I guess, but I think Mick's on some there. I think if you over time don't have some sort of geographical or personal link to a place where this is, now more than ever, that it would be very easy to all of a sudden kind of lose touch with it, because it is so global now as well that you kind of don't need to be anywhere near Manchester to be a Man United fan in any kind of. It'll all be brought to you. They'll come to you. Don't worry about it.
So I was a United fan growing up, and I do vividly remember going to my first United game when I was in college anyway.
What was the game?
18, 19. It was it was kind of a memorable game in that it was around the time George Best was dying, and Roy Keane had just left the club, and they drew 0-0 with Villarreal, and Ferguson was booed. There weren't too many games where Ferguson was booed, and that was one of them. But I was with my dad. I do remember getting the train out from Manchester city centre to Old Trafford and be surrounded by Manchester accents.
Yeah.
And I did think to myself, what in holy am I doing here?
Yeah.
You know? Whereas on TV, it never felt strange, it never felt remote. It was very intimate. It was like Bill, Giles, Dunphy, Brady, watching Man United in Champions League. It made perfect sense. It was like part of my locale. But suddenly being there, it was like, I was like seeing behind the curtain. I was like, hang on, I've no affinity with Manchester whatsoever. What am I doing here? And that definitely started the decline for me, I think. There's various texts in. Niall and Tala, what a brilliant email. I'm a Liverpool fan. I feel the same. It's getting so predictive and repetitive. The Premier League in particular is eating itself. Lads, call the show. Oh, you mentioned this, Mick. Jam Talk. It's the letters in your names and you're talking. Love the show, Bill and Scordy. The name for your super new lads chatting shite segment. Chewing the fat, simple and easy. By the way, I couldn't agree more with John from Limerick's email. Cheers, lads. Seamus in Monaghan. Lads, the name for this part of the show, The Last Chapter, says Bob in Kildare. And somebody very cruelly says, call it the Gary Doherty hour. No real purpose, just filling a gap.
No, that's harsh.
Bloody hell.
On Gary Doherty or on us?
On Gary Doherty?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, not necessarily on us, though.
I know, it's fair on us. Like, we would do it. Imagine Gary Doherty's listening to that in his car right now. I can only apologise.
A lot for off the cuff. I don't know. I still don't think we're there yet. A lot of email, a lot of texts about kind of similar sort of suggestions. But I'm glad that people are participating.
Someone's going to win this.
Yeah. And what are they going to win? One of those, a book of your choice from behind us.
Tell you what they win. See them. They get to come on some night and set the agenda. Topic 1 out the gate, 9 p.m. Well,
they can send an email. They're not coming on the show.
They get to come on and get it off their chest, like Adrian and Jeremy style. Oh dear. Is there anything else you want to say about the Premier League before we go back to covering it 5 nights a week on the football show?
This is actually what I was going to say. Is like, this is a very kind of old man gives out kind of segment. I think like there's still loads that is really, really good about it. I think that it's a natural thing that you lose affinity. I don't think I've lost as much interest in the games. And something Ronan said earlier was like, I remember listening on the radio, like on like Today FM, sometime around Christmas, when Man United, who never used to lose at Old Trafford, lost to Middlesbrough, and it was like really exciting stuff. It was
So
unbelievable.
why is that gone? See, I know exactly what you're talking about.
I
Those
don't know.
moments. Why is that gone?
I don't know because
they're playing the same brand of football, and one team's infinitely better than the other.
I think it's
Whereas
it's way less
back
likely
then
to
it was
happen.
like United played a certain way and Barnsley just got stuck into them. Do you know what I mean? And upset them and
just come out.
Jesper Blomqvist doesn't like it down here. Do you know what I mean?
He doesn't like it on the riverside on a cold Christmas day. But that, like what I was going to say was, you also mentioned when you said that doesn't happen anymore, that a draw is now a really big deal in the title race. There's been something incredible about the last few Premier Leagues and the runs that these teams have gone on, and no matter how much better they are than everyone else, and no matter what money they spend, how much better their managers are, it's still incredibly impressive how good City and Liverpool have been. And I do find that race exciting, and it makes a title race really long. Like if you're in November and you're really worried as a Liverpool fan or as a City fan if you're going to get a draw against Watford or whoever, Watford are gone, Wolves say, right? That's a big deal. Yeah. It makes every Saturday and Sunday vital viewing, but possibly only for the title race.
I can't stand it.
Why?
Because it's too small time. In terms of things, it's just two teams, that's it.
But it's not going to be like that forever, is it?
No, I know, but that's why I can't stand it. Teams. I know, but like if you watch back now, like when we're not watching not too long ago, watching back the Premier League years 02, 03.
Yeah.
I think by December United might have lost 4 or 5 games. They hadn't even had they hadn't the highlights
until Christmas.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's, you know what I mean? Or those league titles.
So is it not better that like from out the gate now, first Saturday of the season, like if Liverpool drop 2 points or 3 points, suddenly it injects a certain
that a little bit
narrative.
The league was, for all intents and purposes, over. We remember, like in November, January this year, it wasn't, but like, and then they claw it back. So it's not like they go toe to toe for the whole year. But I find that joyless. I find the two teams pretty joyless. Obviously, I'm biased, but
like the best movies of all time, or the best art forms, always have like elements of jeopardy or does fall off or flaws. Whereas there's never a movie that goes down as a classic where it's just brilliant all the way. Like it's in, nothing goes wrong for any of the characters and then it just sort of ends after. Do you know what I mean? So that's where people love that. Like
I enjoyed this title race, I have to say. It was pretty spectacular for the last 10, 12 weeks.
What was the most memorable part of last season?
I don't play that one.
No, but I'm maybe a little bit biased towards like by time here. But for me, there was something to
the build up to Liverpool Man City. When they met in about April, didn't they?
Yeah, it was very late. They met. There's the Cup semi-final, Champions League, and I didn't meet in the Champions League. They were just going to. That's what happened. City did what they usually do.
The best part of the season was a whole 5-6 weeks of they're due to play each other as Germany go 2-1 up on France with 15 minutes to go. Germany 2, France 1, 75 minutes. The best part of the league was there was about 5-6 weeks of they're playing each other on April the 14th.
Yeah.
And they're going to keep winning and keep winning. It's going to come down. Like, that was kind of amazing.
It was this sense that they would keep winning. So I just think that in some ways it might have been Everton staying up in the massive pitch invasion. And, again, that's a bit recency bias, but... And also I heard Frank Lampard talk about it the other day, which might be, again, putting in my mind. But I did think... That's the most old school moment that we had in the Premier League last season, and for some reason then it's also my most memorable. So I'm totally talking out both sides of my mouth here, which means that I have complicated feelings on this topic, Joe. Yeah. Which means John has really stirred something.
No, it was a very good email.
The Premier League point is totally fair. I think the Man City, the inbuilt flaw in their makeup or whatever that sees them stumble in the Champions League was the most interesting part of last season, where they've just found that's what draws people into these things. The pieces that do quote unquote best on the show are the ones where something is going wrong. Like when Solskjaer was crashing the car at Man United, that was what people wanted to talk about.
Actually, United were the most interesting thing last season.
United losing all the time was hilarious. But you know what's interesting as a final thought, and we should move on because we've other things to talk about, is that for me, year on year, the Champions League has felt more and more vital each passing year in the knockout stages. And so all of the things that we could... or that we have just mentioned, be it TV saturation or just us getting older, or it's all about money, or the players don't have the same hatred of each other, all these various strands we've pulled in, they still all should theoretically apply to the Champions League, and yet for some reason those big Champions League nights really matter.
But I think that's essentially, and it's like essentially, I suppose, in some way what they're aiming for the Super League. It's because there's parity. They're far closer to each other in terms of quality, so the games do have a sense of jeopardy, and you don't know what'll happen. Real Madrid can confound all critics and come from beat all the best teams that
because
are possibly in there
and Benzema.
and do it. But you know, and it just can't be sustained over a league. It just isn't possible.
Just feels like a bigger tournament. It's not just there's jeopardy. I still think there's plenty of jeopardy in Premier League games. It's like, oh my God.
Well, like Man City nearly blew the title by going like 2-0 down to Aston Villa after like 60 minutes in a game they ended up having to win. Like that was kind of incredible what they did. Like, you know,
it's unfortunate with them though as well, isn't it? That you know, if that, say it was roles reversed and that was Liverpool, that's an all-time iconic moment. You know, it's never forgotten. With City, it's
you
just
just
like,
stepped on the exact point I was going to make. Is that
well,
there is
no.
But
working too
in
long.
in a good way though. It's like this is it. It's the fact that City are one of the teams. We talked about this a good bit last season.
Oh, yeah.
City are people aren't angry with them. They don't hate them.
Yeah.
They don't care.
Maybe
about
it
them.
is City.
And you could buy every player that's ever been. And Haaland isn't going to change anything. People will be interested in him. They'll be interested in De Bruyne. They'll be interested in Grealish. They'll be even interested in Riyad Mahrez.
So if
right?
this title
they
race
just don't care about Man City.
had been Man United Liverpool.
Yeah, completely different.
So maybe it is. So we've actually reached the nub of the issue.
there you go again.
Can I also
Man City.
before we move on though?
Your
because
fans are going to love this, by the way.
Yeah.
I dread to think of the YouTube.
This is the
all
way it
7
is.
of their fans are
Neutral
going to
stuff. Sorry about this.
Yeah, all 7 of them.
There's just because we're going to move on, and there's more
Gotta
text than
move
we
on.
can even keep up with here. But Tom in Dublin has actually hit a really one that I hadn't thought of before, which is I think the lack of Irish players in the Premier League, especially at the top
big
end of the
time.
game, especially with Man United and Liverpool, has a bit to do with the ambiguity that wasn't there in the rose-tinted era of the 90s and 2000s.
Sorry, that's a great
If you're
point.
a United fan with Dennis Irwin and Roy Keane on the team and John O'Shea coming through,
It's
a very different team that you're looking at.
It's a
then,
pit.
you
I
know?
don't know how we didn't think of that sooner.
Yeah.
That is such a good point, because even now, when Premier League years is on, if United are there, the first thing you'll check is Keane or Irwin playing, and even if they're showing a Chelsea game and Duffer's playing,
Yeah.
you're 20 times more invested.
You're
That's a
watching
brilliant
Leeds under
point.
O'Leary, like
Yeah, yeah.
with the lads there, and
Sorry, that's a big one for us.
So the
isn't it?
reason I'm a Villa fan because we had everyone's like Paul McGrath. We had 4 Irish players in the 11 in a team that was going for the title.
Yeah,
You know,
and that comes back to your locale thing and feeling part of it. We have totally lost our presence in the league as a nation.
yeah. We're praying for Matt Doherty to get to that this Spence lad isn't good enough to knock Matt Doherty out of the Spurs team.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we're talking about, top end at the moment, you know?
Well, look,
You kind of hit on it before, Joe. I remember during the Euros, the deferred Euros, and we'd come off the back of like half-full Premier League stadiums, or in fact empty Premier League stadiums, and dribs and drabs towards the end, and watching national teams in a tournament that we weren't even in.
yeah.
You just saw what it meant, and like Italy went in this unbelievable run, and it felt like the continent swept in behind them,
Yeah.
especially when they were playing England.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's kind of it as well. It's all down to identity, really.
We'll take a short break. The Gary Doherty hour continues in. No, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. That's cruel. Once a week for 1 hour of the show. We've been doing it for the last couple of weeks, and we're enjoying it. Lots of texts in. OTB discuss things. Not an opinion, but a name suggestion, says Scott in Summerhill in Meath. It lacks character for me, Scott.
Yeah.
It's a little too literal. Though I do like that you're doing what I want, which is
You
a
gave them
name
an
on
exact
the
brief.
tin.
You gave them a very specific
Joe
brief.
will not have to explain that every week.
He has fulfilled the brief.
discuss things after the news.
Colin in Kildare, how about off the cuff?
We've had a few of them.
That's not bad.
It's not off the cuff though, is it?
Have we overly played on the off the
Yeah.
ball thing?
We were only talking about that today,
We're
actually.
talking about
Yeah.
the halcyon days of Off the Bull, Joe, the Last Dance podcast.
Yeah.
No, well, I think that was the
Was there an off the wall?
It was.
that was
that
the Game
about?
of Thrones.
Game
one.
of
That was Game
Thrones.
of Thrones. There was Off the Brawl, Ronan.
Yeah,
There
famously.
was
Off the cuff's not terrible, because this does go in
Off the Bench.
different directions. I'll come on the show only if angry producer Mick gets to shout in my ear the whole way through, says Darren. Hi lads, I love the show. Suggestion for a name for this segment: Midweek Crisis.
We're not in crisis. We just discuss other crises in the world.
I suspect this is sent to the wrong show. Sean, I'm a dub. I love coddle. Dinner in a bowl, some good bread. Effing awesome. And he says, I use smoked rashers or ham, finding it hard to get nice sausages.
Aren't we all?
No, that's
That
tough.
must be
That's
Moncrief,
tough.
I suspect.
Yeah.
Sure, what would we know about it as a title suggestion, Ronan? Galway, for your segment title, I suggest Hot Topics, Cool Heads, Ray C and Mayo.
Like it.
Welcome along to Hot Topics and Cool Heads.
I think it's more like cool topics, hot heads, to be honest.
Ray, that's going on the maybe list. John Kay is correct. John Kay being our emailer earlier. Of course, the English Premier League is a dull, joyless celebration of money, but There is an antidote. Have you proofread this, by the way? This is long.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay.
I think.
Support a team that deserves your support. Interesting concept. I was a City fan for years, all through the 80s, through Niall Quinn's years and the relegations, but I've almost totally disengaged now. The beginning of the decline for me was the Shinawatra years, but the UAE ownership was a bridge too far. I always kept an eye on Wycombe Wanderers since the O'Neill years. Now they're my club. And you know what? It's brilliant. Cup runs are a source of joy. Promotions and relegations and playoffs. Highlights with Colin Murray on Quest. This week
That's a good show, by the way. It's a good show,
I didn't know what that was. This week I spent €100 on a replica shirt and a Gareth Ainsworth training shirt, and the club need that money. That is the answer. Support a club that needs you, says CJ. Wow.
And I just, at one point, and I wouldn't ever say this, for God's sake, just go to the League of Ireland, will you? If you're not, come on. Like, don't be giving it to Wycombe.
Wycombe over any League of Ireland club.
Where is he from? Where is he from?
He didn't say. His name's CJ.
Yeah, now CJ could also be a massive, like, well, especially with that kind of outlook on life, he's probably a Bows fan.
Can we move on here for a second?
God almighty.
So we're not going to get all the topics that we were planning to. I'll fill you in on how much I hate the Pol Pot documentary another time. We can park that one. It really, really offensively bad. But Mick, the GAA season, the curtain has fallen on it. You are not looking forward to the club championships.
He's put words in my mouth there now.
That's fair.
I am looking forward to the club championship. I'm looking forward to the club championship for my club in Clare, Smith O'Brien's, who are the senior for the first time in like 10 years or so. Mm-hmm. They have their first game next weekend. I'm buying the streaming package. Like, I am absolute, and I'm going to go maybe to a couple of games if I can, but I'm buying the streaming package, which is an amazing thing that we are now offered. I think that's a fantastic new kind of road for club championships. I'm absolutely looking forward to it. I'm also going to try and go to my future club when the kids are old enough, in Fingallians, my local in Swords, Paul Flynn's club. You know, I'm going to try and at least keep an eye and maybe go to a game or two. I am absolutely excited for the club championship, but they're the only two I'm looking forward to, because the interest in the club championship, especially in the early stages, is local. So for me, and this is just my opinion, other people have other opinions, and they make it very, very clear whenever you suggest anything to do with the county championship or the county season being possibly too short or over too early. I don't feel that the counter opinion is wrong. I do feel that it is quite aggressive, in that you're wrong. Club championship starts next week. It's got to be brilliant. That's what GA is all about. I just feel like that's been really pushed down our throats. Club championship is what the GA is all about, and the majority of the players play there, and should they be looked after? Morris Brosnan was on the show last night. I thought he put it probably best. It's not about whether it's what's good for the overall game or what's not. There's loads of people that have to be catered to, and ultimately this is what players want, and maybe they should be the most important. Yeah. And from the reaction we've got, and you talked to Mike Casey there, and I don't think he was as sure as a lot of people have said, but that we've talked to. But
most of the inter-county players I've talked to are in favour of the current situation.
Yeah.
They prefer it.
You know, and so in that case, fine, that's grand.
I don't think the public like it though.
No, I don't think the overall public like it. And again, I just wish that we were able to talk about that a little bit and to why. You know, so again, I am interested in the club championship, but let's stop pretending that the club championship has this mass appeal across the board, that the first round of the Cork championship on TV on like a Saturday night is as interesting as the All-Ireland football final that was on this week in front of 82,000, because that's what the GA is all about. But we are getting that a little bit. So Malachi Clerkin wrote a piece on this that was wildly misunderstood and really unfairly treated a couple of years ago. But his point ultimately came down to the club in your local area is the most important thing to you if you're a GA fan, right? Absolutely. But you don't. When was the last time your team was involved in the Inter-County Championship this year?
Well, there's that old saying.
A long time, but you've been watching every game and living and dying by it, because that's what you want to watch, the pinnacle of the game.
The old saying is, who cares?
And dying by it.
Okay, right, that might be a bit too strong. I've been living and dying by it.
Who cares about a club match? 2 tens.
Yeah, that's absolutely. And is that not fair? And is that not okay? And
I think it's okay.
And a few hardcore people. And a few people who'll watch every game,
but
the
viewing figures for the club matches weren't good last year.
No.
The proof's in the pudding.
Yeah.
The occasional one which was like, maybe it was on after Ireland beat the All Blacks in November.
Yeah, well, which, by the way, we should have a conversation as to why viewing figures for club championship games not being okay is one thing, but viewing figures for our national championship in another sport need to reach a certain point before they're worth being put on television. But I think that might be a conversation for another night.
As in the League of Ireland?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm not being coy about what I'm saying. I just don't want to get into it now. But Declan McBennett went on Dan and Johnny's show and said that the minimum they need to be hitting is 100,000 for it to be worth their while, and League of Ireland games routinely weren't hitting that.
Every week now you've gone for RTE. I'm going to pull you back.
I'm going for anybody. I'm talking about a very specific point.
I'm
joking. I don't think I've gone for RTE at all.
You didn't.
I think the League of Ireland
week.
should have more of a presence in our national media, and I think we could have a say in that as well.
100%. We're as guilty as anyone.
Yeah.
For sure. So what are you, Arthur, Ronan? This club championship debate, come on.
Couldn't care less.
Well, stop. You can't
No, about
say
the
that.
club. About the club.
Oh,
couldn't care less.
I thought you said I couldn't care less about this conversation.
No, I'm checked out, Joe. Yeah. No, I couldn't care less about the club.
These are not popular things to say.
I'm sure I don't care. It's like I'm not going to be watching it. Like it's not going to be watching it.
So would you elongate the inter-county season?
It's not that I'd elongate it, because as you're at the root of it, and again we go back to Morris again last night, you kind of have to be fair to those who are actually.
Yeah.
I'm not putting much in, so I don't expect to have whatever I want out. You know what I mean?
Fair enough.
So I'm kind of quite happy with whatever it is. In an ideal world, you'd love to have more inter-county, because it is, I think, at the minute, and it might be flavoured again by bias, but it's certainly the most I've ever enjoyed it. Football and hurling. I think it's fantastic. Like every single weekend, I know it's very tightly packed and everything else, but every weekend in the last few months there's been something to look forward to.
Yeah.
You know, like there's at least one match there. You're like, well, I'm not going to miss that. So that's. I mean, you'd love to elongate that for sure, but if it's not a goer, it's not a goer. But I'm not going to substitute it by watching club.
That's a very reasonable response, by the way. That who am I to demand that I get it in August? So I'll just take what I'm given, but I'm not going to claim to look
Hot
the club.
topic, cool
That's a
heads.
very reasonable. Well, indeed. Ronan Mullen.
I don't know, like, you've got the multitude of viewers who are more interested in the marquee event, which is the inter-county season, and the back end of that, and the fact that seems so curtailed is unfortunate, but seemingly necessary if everything is to be boxed off. And like, as you said, and like Rory Grigan mentioned it last week, I'm talking about the 99% of people would probably prefer to watch the All-Ireland inter-county final, but 99% of the playing population aren't in that sphere. Like, we're thinking about the 1% of playing population versus 99% of the viewing population. So it's just impossible to tally those two things.
Yeah, but can I just say something on that, though? I think and I love the ethos of it, and it's great that we're paying more attention to them, but we're not as interested in the Leinster Senior League population when we talk about football, or all these people who play games. And I understand, and that's the great thing about GA, is that ultimately Sean O'Shea and David Clifford are going to go back and play for their clubs now, and they're part of those teams, and they're not playing at different levels exclusively. I understand that, but at the same time, it's like, right, we do have to look after them or something, but it's not as if we're supposed to be too worried about the 99% of players as viewers and as the public. It's like we want to see the marquee games, and even in some ways when you go down to say like the Talton Cup level and stuff like that. Say for example in hurling, right? It's like I am hugely passionate about trying to grow hurling outside of. I'm not doing anything about it. Sorry. I'm
given my life.
I'm hugely passionate about the idea that we should be like that. There should be more work done by the GA to grow hurling outside of these counties that it's currently played in. However,
he's hugely passionate about that.
It doesn't mean that we have to sit there and like spend as much time talking about Donegal versus Tyrone in the Nicky Rackard Cup as we do talking about the All Ireland hurling final.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not just club and county, but there is an element of natural elitism that interest feeds.
They can't get equal billing. Like, it's absurd to suggest they should get equal billing.
No. I don't buy the argument that it's going to damage the popularity of the GA though.
No,
that, that we've given up August for marketing purposes. I don't.
But what they have given up is to go back to back All Ireland finals. Like, you barely have time to consume one before you're into getting ready for another.
Is that just a media complaint though?
No, I don't think so. And also it was crystallised especially by the penalty shootout, which we don't have to relitigate that, but like that seems unnecessary for a tradition. Like,
is it not one of the strongest memories of the entire season?
No, but one of the few sports which has a tradition of replays, and some of the greatest games ever played in Gaelic games were replays, and we've just totally said we don't have time for those anymore.
Yeah.
And even the All Ireland final, which was played at the weekend, seemed to be both of them, in fact, were at one point looking set for extra time, when in years gone by it would have been replays. So I don't know if that was.
You can't tell me there isn't time for an All-Ireland final replay. Now I know there is one technically allowed of extra time.
I know.
But it's like you can't tell me that week.
Yeah.
Can't be made up, even in the dual county.
And you can't.
I still think that week can be made up. Like,
you also
in
can't
the
say
club
it's a teething problem or it's unforeseen. Like much like half the top players in the country going away to play in America because they've got a few weeks off rather than going straight back to their clubs. Like they weren't unforeseen. They were flagged like way ahead of time. So.
Is that happening though? Because we've said it on the show before. A lot of the counties aren't responding in terms of bringing their club championships forward, and then I've seen that's been shot down as not true. That counties are bringing club championships forward, so that the club player now is playing games in early August that
perhaps even too soon for some of the county players. Like, maybe, they have to get out almost.
But the club player is getting summer football and hurling in a way that wasn't happening. So that's surely a great thing.
Oh, I think we started off this conversation ultimately saying that we're probably at the point now. I do think there could be just a little bit of tweaking in terms of maybe the league could be played off a little bit quicker, and we could It was weird having the championship in April this year, but maybe we could get used to that, and maybe that's just the way it is. And the league does lose its importance naturally, especially in hurling. We talked about that.
They're all dumping the league.
Completely pointless. Yeah. In football, I think that will increasingly happen. Although the league positions feed into your position in the championship if you're in Division 2 or 3, so that's a complicated one. But I don't know. There's just I'm less militant about it than I was earlier in the year. I have to say, I feel like a lot of the arguments that have been well made and talked on a reasonable level, where I feel they are getting through, and ultimately the people involved are behind it, and you have to go along with that. And I think it's changed my mind, and I think that's a good thing. I think it's good for over the course of the year that we could have evolving opinions on it. I suppose the initial point of this is, are we excited about this kind of blanket coverage of the club championships that's coming, in does that mean that GEA is still on and still part of the season? And ultimately it's not. I mean, the GEA season is, for all intents and purposes, on a national level over, because there is going to be no national interest in any one story until you get to something like Ballyhale go on a run, or Currafin or something like that, or someone that has a bit of national profit. That's way down the line. So while I will have my local interests, you will have your local interests, Ronan, you'll have your local interests, Arthur doesn't give a shite. We have, that's all great, and that's really important to us. But we're not going to be talking about those things on Monday, because none of the other three of us are going to know what the hell's going on.
That's the problem. Germany will play England in the Euros final. They have beaten France by 2-1. Some final text in. How about off the boil? Nah, okay. Said that texter shooting himself down there. My 2 cents with Kent Brockman is a text into 53106. Lads, call the section of the show News, Chews and Views, says Ed. P.S. Good to see Ronan back steady in the ship. Off the ball, on the record, says Darren. That's a maybe, is it?
Well, clearly a big fan of News Talk, because there's already a show called On the Record.
Needs to be the producer of that.
Are we continuing this a lot when the football show's back?
We don't know where it will go, Joe. But to be honest, I don't know if people are saying they like it, but they're giving us loads of suggestions. So we might find a bit of room for, maybe it's an occasional slot.
I feel if we're going to do it, it needs to be weekly.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? I feel like it's all in or not in.
Right, well, we'll drop Wednesday at rugby next.
I don't know. So, thank you very much. Ronan Mullen, thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Mick McCarthy, thank you very much.
Thanks, lads.
Arthur O'Dea, good man.
Cheers.
Back in a sec.